This is one of my favorite topics that I feel very strongly about. And so I'm very excited to talk about something that seems extremely common, that seems extremely straightforward. And you might be asking, why do we feel like we need to talk about how to talk to people? Well, one, we all need reminders. And then two, it's always helpful, especially in this world, to have reminders that we all put our pants on the same way in the morning. We all have the same stressors because it's very easy to forget. But when it comes to selling and sales in federal government, we at the Pulse are not huge fans of the B2G or B2B or B2C. Why? Because at the end of the day, we're all human. And at the end of the day, you'll see at the bottom is that federal contracting is the quintessential human to human selling process. That's because humans, even though there are now some automated, topics as AI is kind of growing, you can't turn a corner. You can't hear anyone talk without saying AI. You're actually going to hopefully go 20 minutes without hearing that word here. But at the end of the day, humans are making the decisions, anywhere from the appropriation decisions to the day-to-day contracting workforce, all the way to the source selection committees and the person that is making the final award. So what that means is that at the end of the day, the people making the decisions to do business with you are not computers. They're real people with emotions and needs, desires, underlying biases, all of these things that we need to be conscious of, and not just another person or a machine at the end of your email address. And I think that's really easy to forget in this industry. So we're here to remind you that at the end of the day, we're all human. So let's go through 5 keys to building relationships with federal buyers. The first key is, you will hear this from every federal buyer out there. You will hear this probably at every talk is, they get hundreds of emails a day of people that are not relevant to what they're doing. So the number one key is understand who you're pursuing, right? There are different stakeholders. There are different roles and responsibilities throughout the entire federal government. And believe it or not every one of them is responsible or is going to or wants to buy what you're selling or is responsible for buying anything at all, right? There's a lot of different role players in there. So if you want to make sure that you're forming the right relationship that's going to be productive for you in your sales and business development life cycle, you want to make sure that you are knowledgeable of the key roles, the naming conventions, the titles of the people that are going to be relevant to who you want to be talking to, right? The first one is procurers and buyers. So that is the contracting officers, the contracting officer representatives, the purchase order authority, the contracting specialist, anyone that has kind of the words procurement, contract, acquisition, things like that are the people that you're going to want to get to really know, because those are the people that are making the decisions on how the contract is put out there, on how the contract is acquired, on how it's competed, right? At the end of the day, the influencers, which is the second bullet below, your program managers, your end users are all very helpful people, right? When they are executing the contract and helping put the requirement together. But what I think gets missed out a lot on is those are typically not the roles. The influencers are not making the decisions on how that contract and that requirement is going to be competed. Those are the procurers and buyers. So at the end of the day, knowing who they are, being able to reach out to them and talk to them is really helpful in making sure that your business development strategy, your capture strategy is on the right track. Because a program manager could be telling you they love you and they're going to go this route and they're going to go that. We've had that happen to so many clients. They're going to go this direction. And then all of a sudden the RFP comes out and how many of us are like, oh, wow, it's a completely different socioeconomic set aside competition. It came out on something that you have no access to, and you're left scrambling. And that's because at the end of the day, the influencers do not have the decision-making power on how that's acquired. And that's very important to remember. The last is your end users, right? And those are the people that are being impacted. They're kind of the customers of the influencers, right? The program managers at the end of the day are still supporting another customer, which is their end user. So, the Army is supporting the warfighter at the end of the day, or different types of support. So they still have customers at the end of the day that they have to support. And those are the end users. And again, still very important people. especially when you're performing the work. But those end users are the furthest away from being able to make the decision about how that requirement, how that thing that they need is acquired. But more importantly, it's more important to understand that who you're talking to is buying what you're selling. So right now, say you understand the critical players. You're like, hey, Amber, I get the need. I get that they have this title. I get that. But not everyone is going to be buying what you're selling. So to make sure that you are having the most kind of intentional contact and communications plan, you need to do your research to understand that the people that you're contacting, even if they have those titles, have bought and are buying what you are selling. Because if they're not, it's still going to fall on deaf ears and that relationship's not going to be productive to you.
All right, second key, and Amber touched on this in her intro a little bit, humanize your sales efforts. We're not doing B2G anymore. We're doing H to H, human to human now. So just remembering that these people are not random government cogs. They're human beings trying to do their jobs, just like you're trying to do your job. I'm trying to do my job. Everyone, just like everybody else, right?
We're just trying to survive.
Right. It's all you can do some days. But go ahead and send your emails, absolutely, but make sure they're personalized. Like you can absolutely automate that way, but sending a generic email to like every government POC email address that you have is not the way to go, because that clearly means you're not targeting the right buyers like we just talked about. And this is also a really crucial way because we're trying to build trust here. You want to become a familiar face that buyers know that they are reliable and responsible. So if you can be friendly, be nice, be friendly. Remember that these are people trying to do their jobs. They've got hundreds of emails to answer. Be patient, show forgiveness, literally very basic social skills that I think gets lost in kind of the craziness of like, oh my goodness, who is going to buy what I'm trying to sell? I need a contract when. So just remember that engage in like a conversation that works for you and communicates your prospect, but also you're not dominating the conversation. If you can start with a how's your day going before you jump into your sales pitch, that's going to make such a difference. And then at least let the person you're talking to be able to take a deep breath, and then they can focus on you better as well when you do get to your sales pitch part.
Exactly. Humans. We are not robots. We are humans. So key number 3 kind of leads into exactly what Haley had mentioned, right? Is the 80-20 rule. And there's so many 80-20 rules out there. So I wanted to make sure we clarified. My favorite 80-20 rule is something that my father always taught me, which is 80% of the people are going to kind of benefit from the work, whereas 20% of the people are doing the work, right? But that's really not what we're talking about here. This is the 80-20 rule of communication, which is really plays a huge part when you're working on active listening, which is something we could all absolutely work on. But anything here is when you have a potential client, you want them to spend 80% of the time talking and only 20% of the time listening. And that's because the more that we are talking, so say, Haley is a federal buyer, I am me, I do love to talk, anyone would tell you that. But with any conversation, the more I am talking, the more I'm thinking about what I'm going to say next or how I'm going to respond. I'm not fully listening to Haley. I'm not fully hearing what she's saying. I'm not able to watch her body language as well, right? All of these kind of contextual clues that we get, I'm not really able to pick up on those. And so the more likely I am able to miss potentially something that Haley's saying that could truly help them. And when I say help them, I'm not always talking about the product and service that I'm selling. Maybe they're talking about a need that I can't support, but I have teaming partners that can, right? And making that referral and making that type of connection is still another way to grow that relationship. No, does it directly benefit you at that time? No, but we're growing a relationship here. And so that kind of taking the backseat of the transaction versus doing something not in your self-interest is something that's really helpful when you're doing active listening. So ways that we like to recommend people do kind of sharpen their active listening skills is the OPC strategic questioning technique, which is asking open-ended questions to get people talking, asking probing questions, right? So that the client also is, or potential client is going through self-discovery mode on their own. A lot of those conversations aren't had. A lot of those conversations are had more with the end user, where it's like, what is this requirement doing for you? What is it not doing for you? How is it not helping? But when talking to the procurers and buyers, asking them, what has worked with the previous vendor, or what is hard with the end user, what is a hard requirement to meet, where are you struggling, right? Asking those types of questions is always helpful to get them really think through, okay, where, federal contracting can sometimes be looked at as we are just kind of always continuously doing the same thing over and over and over again. And that's not productive for us as taxpayers or us as vendors. And so those conversations not only help you understand a little bit of what the problem is, but could actually help that procurer or buyer understand, oh, maybe there's a different way for us to do that, right? And there's a way, and then that allows you to be able to step in and offer that different way. And then the last technique is confirming questions, summarizing and validating the shared information, right? So what we all learn is a good way to connect with someone is once you hear them say something, you kind of repeat back what you heard to ensure that there's mutual understanding.
Our fourth key we have for you is to learn to see rejection as only temporary. Cold calling's hard, and it's hard not to let it get to you at first. But you cannot take rejection personally. Do take it seriously, don't take it personally. But that's a skill you'll learn over time. You'll get thicker skin as time goes on and more people say no to you. But there's ways we can follow up, even if it's rejection. If you lost a proposal, if a solicitation went to a different set aside group, and instead of you, ask for a debrief. Ask how you can do better next time. Ask what you did wrong. But keep it positive, keep it light. Like, thanks so much. Like, I'm going to use this, I'm going to learn from it, and you will hear from me again. Similarly, if you say you're going to follow up, do follow up, actually do it. Snooze the email. It's pretty easy. It'll pop right back up, and then you'll know. So it's, if you get one of those generic, like, connect with our Osdaboos or watch out for Sam for the opportunity, be like, okay, yes, I will. And then I'll talk to you again in 2 weeks. And then by following up and actually doing that when you say you're going to do it, that's part of building trust. Showing that you're dependable and you can do the things you say you're going to do. Like, if you can't follow up in an email in 2 weeks that you said, this person's going to be like, oh, they can't do that. Maybe they can't actually provide those capabilities that they're trying to sell me. So little things like that, little human nature things that will get stuck in people's brain. You always want to make sure you're on top of things. And we like to say here, federal contracting is not for the faint of heart. You're going to get rejected most of the time. But you do get better results in the long run if you try to keep a positive attitude and mindset about this, rather than to take it personally and say, well, I'm never going to work with that agency. Because it's probably not you. It's not personal. There's, like, maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe their kid's sick. They couldn't get back to you because they had to go to the doctor. Maybe there's a new solicitation that's going out. Maybe something else they're working on had a huge protest put out against it. Like, it's likely not you that you're not getting a response. There's a lot of people trying to contact them about a lot of important things. So when you learn to start to change your mindset that these things are temporary, you'll become a little bit better at it, and you'll say, okay, I'll follow up again, no big deal. And you can make it fun, like, I don't know, put a sticky note on your laptop, like, make it cheesy, like a little smiley face, some generic saying, like, sales is a process, or what's another, like, every no brings you closer to a yes. Like, we can have fun with it, laugh about it, you'll feel better over time.
Absolutely. And this is the hardest thing in federal contracting. I just saw Kathy's note about rejection being the fun part, right? And when you're in sales and business development, right, it's part of the challenge, if you will, right? And accepting that challenge. It has come with, there's a lot of people that I'm sure are listening to this webinar that are attending right now, and all of us out there that can tell stories of, working with a boss or leadership or themselves, not understanding the federal market timeline, which is completely different than the commercial pipeline. It is longer, it is harder, it takes, where it could take in the commercial world, right? Because there's different rules and regulations, which means that there's not really, you could form a relationship and take them out to dinner and do all these things and probably form a good relationship within 3 to 4 months of what you're doing. In federal contracting, it most likely will take you 3 to 4 months to get a response, the first response. And I always have to let people know that consistently with our clients, or even when I was doing it myself, right? It's easy to get extremely down on yourself in the process. Yeah, but you just gotta have to keep chipping kind of at that iceberg in order to get that response and really start kind of changing your mindset of, I just have to be persistent. I have to be persistent, and making sure not only are you persistent, but you're pleasantly persistent. And ensuring that, that we are giving grace, that we are treating people like humans, and that it's not a personal thing, and realizing that you're not the only one that's reaching out to them. They're most likely getting 100 emails plus a day from the vendors like you. So the only way you're going to stand out, especially when you're doing emails and phone calls, and none of it is kind of face to face, is them consistently seeing your name pop up in their email every 2 weeks, right? That is the only way you're going to stand out. I don't care how pretty your one pager is. I don't care if you send gifts or memes, all of that. If you have the best subject line in the world, the only way you stand out time over time is by them seeing your name and that email come through every week or every 2 weeks. And then you start kind of forming this habit. And then eventually they get interested and they click on it, right? And you get a response, but that is the only way you stand out. Plus, we're gluttons for punishment here at the Pulse. It's fun for us, Okay. So last key is exactly what I was just talking about, and Haley's been talking about too, is follow through, follow through, follow through, and then follow through again. Trust is the most important thing in the federal contracting industry. Not just trusting your vendor, but trusting that you know what you're going to get, right? There's a reason why a lot of these larger vendors that have been around for over, several decades continuously, like, I have built that, like, the government doesn't go anywhere else but for them for that, because they trust, because they know what they're getting, even if it's not the best thing in the world, even if they know what they're going to get. And sometimes that is more comfortable than going out to another vendor not knowing what you're going to get. I will share a story. My partner goes to Chick-fil-A almost every single day. It's insane to me. But he finds comfort in knowing what he's going to get every single day, the service, how fast it is, the quality, all of that. So think of that as the same thing, right? Is you want to make sure that you're dependable in what you're delivering. So there's a few different instances that we're trying to point out to you here. First is follow through, even if you don't get a response on the first cold call or email, or second one, or even the 10th one. I'm telling you, the only way you stand out in an email is by them seeing your name all the time. So it's not ideal because there's no connection, there's no connective tissue there. But rejection is temporary, as we just talked about, right? As Haley was just mentioning. So at the end of every email, at the end of every phone call, let them know that you'll be checking back in at a certain time, say, hey, I'm going to follow up in 2 weeks, then do it. What we see happen a lot is people then don't do it, right? Because it's easy to fall off. So what we like to remind people to do is set calendar reminders, a sticky note, anything you can to make sure that you are being consistent with your words, right? And the commitments that you're making. Second instance that we're looking at, right, is follow through even if the federal buyer has made the first connection. So sometimes we'll see that someone has reached out to us or has reached out through a portal, right, whatever have you. And we might take, a day or 2 or 3 to get back to them. Or it might go through an automated machine reply, right? That you don't want to have that happen in the federal contracting space. You want that to go to a human, because you always want to make sure you're following up within the first 24 to 48 hours of the first contact. Mainly because statistics show that people that do that, they're nearly more than half times to actually qualify that lead and get that lead than those that take a long time to follow up, or that have a robot kind of greet that connection first, and it takes them a while to get to a human. You want to make sure that if they are reaching out to you, that that is going directly to a human that's going to then respond. And then the last tip there, this will turn, there we go, is my favorite one that actually people don't, I think, forget a lot, especially when you're in business development, when you're in sales, and you have a process like passing it off to a capture manager that then, you know, when you win goes to a program manager, right? And you never really see it again. But keeping your eyes on what is happening even after your job is done or after you win an opportunity is ideal for when you want to help kind of solidify that relationship and carrying that forward. Because you've met your goal, you've done your job, right? And we all typically then move on to the next client, or who else are we trying to, you know, what prospect are we trying to get to turn into a real client? And so we move on. And no, that's not the job, right? Because we're forming a relationship here. We want to make sure that we're practicing the after the sales follow-up, right? And that helps foster a stronger relationship. So that means after you win, even checking and saying, hey, I'm so happy this worked out. I hope this goes great. Please let me know if you need anything. Or, you know, checking and saying, hey, I heard from the program manager that this is going really great. I'm so happy to hear that, because that's not the last and only time that that procurer or buyer is going to have a requirement for you, right? So you don't want that relationship to just cut off and end. You want it to continue, and letting them know, like, hey, I'm still tracking what's going on. I'm tracking what you're needing. I'm tracking because I'm here. Helps them feel like, okay, this person's here for that established relationship and not so much here just for like that one opportunity. And then the next time you hear from them, you know, is when, you know, you need something again, because we all have those friends. We all have those relationships where we hear from them, they need something, we give it to them, and then we don't hear from them for months. And then the only time you hear from them is when they need something. And none of us like that feeling, right? So taking that forward is always very important as well.
Right? You work so hard to build the relationship. Don't just let it fizzle out.
Right? Don't just, you know, just say, okay, I did my job, all done, you know, never done, unless you're leaving the market, you know, then I guess technically you're done.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the most important key to never forget is we all are all humans. Yes, some things are automated these days and there are some machines, but we should all be able to tell the difference here. And so keeping that in your mind, understanding, practicing empathy, practicing active listening, questioning, really looking to understand the person and then the buyer, right, is something that we absolutely recommend to anyone looking to establish a successful relationship with a federal buyer.